You good? All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing, again, thank you guys for coming. Hope you're enjoying yourself, enjoying the food. We've done this, I guess, 3 years in a row to where we've had at least some kind of speakers come in. We feel like it's a good thing for the kids to just hear an outside voice other than the same coaches that they hear day in and day out. So these guys here, or a couple of them played for us or with, no, I guess we never played together. But all these guys are some of the more respected guys just in the DFW area that have some pretty impressive resumes and just cool stories. So to have you guys be able to listen to it, I know all the kids will benefit. So first thing we're going to do is just do a quick introduction, just to let everybody just kind of explain who they are, where they came from, where they are currently, where they went to college, professional, so on and so on. So if you want to go ahead and start it.
Yeah. I'm Austin Knight, Nash's older, smaller brother. Grew up in Denton, went to Denton Ryan High School, played at Dallas Baptist, and I wasn't good enough to play pro ball like a couple of these guys, which is okay, but I like to think I got the most out of my ability, so that's where I was supposed to end up. Started coaching at Dallas Baptist. I coached at Texas A&M. I coached at a junior college, Northeast Texas, in East Texas for a few years. And then I knew the right guy and got into professional baseball coaching. And I think of all my experiences, one of the questions is what was your best experience? And I spent 2 years in the Dominican Republic coaching with the Seattle Mariners. And so if you know anything about that country, I think now 30% of the major leagues rosters are made up of players from that small country. So to see a different perspective on the game and how they go about their business was really helpful for me as a player or as a coach and a person. So that's me, Austin.
What up, AK? My name is Nash. Everything I'm going to say is basically the same as AK, just little brother. I think the main difference is that I have been playing pro ball and don't believe AK, he was definitely good enough to play.
Just an All-American, right?
What?
He was an All-American?
Yeah, dude could play. I think I've been playing ball with the Jays for the last 6 years, and to be honest, just love playing, love doing that. I got a little boy I like taking care of, got a girl on the way, so there's that. That's fun. Other than that, I'm just here happy to talk to y'all, so yep.
Yeah, I'm Christian Boulware. I actually grew up Lake Dallas, so right down the road too. Played there for 4 years, went to junior college straight out of high school, Panola Junior College, and then like them, went to Dallas Baptist right after that. Was blessed to be able to play there 3 years. Part of it, I got 3 years because of COVID year. So I just actually finished up this past year on that super regional team and actually got blessed again and got straight into coaching. So I'm actually assistant varsity coach over at Denton High School. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. Again, very fortunate to be where I'm at and the experiences that kind of rolled with it.
Zach Cook, grew up in Flower Mound right down the road as well. Went to Marcus. I'm the only one at the table who didn't go to DBU, so that's cool. I went to UTA right down the road. We played them a whole lot. Signed out after my senior year during COVID with the Blue Jays. This year's my first professional year with them. Had a lot of fun, learned a lot. My favorite or my most memorable baseball moment was honestly probably summer ball in college, which if you talk to a lot of college guys, no one really likes summer ball. You're away from your friends and family and playing all the time. But I was up in the middle of nowhere in Liberal, Kansas and had the best summer of my life just playing baseball and shooting guns and otherwise just not having any responsibilities.
So most of these guys here want to play in college. Quick show of hands, who does want to play college baseball? So just about everybody, if not everybody. So everyone, I think, is a little bit shocked as soon as you get to the next level. It's not just you show up like you do in high school or get to go through the same type of day that you do through summer ball with your select teams and all that. So I just kind of wanted all these guys to just touch on the average day, what goes on in college, so you guys basically just know what you're getting into.
I guess I'll go first because, once again, they all went to the same school. But, yeah, so college is definitely different from high school as far as, if nothing else, the academics is way more challenging. Typical day at UTA, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, weights at 6 a.m., which was horrible. But up early, finish weights. Most of the time you have class right afterwards. Go straight, try to get something to eat, go straight there. You're in class until noon, 1 o'clock, something like that, straight to the field. Contrary to NCAA rules, the whole 20 hours a week thing does not exist. You practice from, 2 to 5, 2 to 6, whatever it is, go home. I say do homework, but really you just get on Call of Duty with your friends. Try to get something good to eat, which is hard, especially because, you're not working, you can't really have a job, so the money's tight. It's definitely not for everyone. It's not, I can't speak for anyone else at the table, but, it's not, where I went to school wasn't the Power 5 experience where there's, buffet lines set up for you at every turn and everything's super just easy and handed to you and there's tons of donors and stuff like that. So I feel like I got better for it as a person, right? I kind of learned how to be poor, which now benefits me greatly because I make no money. But yeah, I got to grow up and figure out how to be an adult while doing something that I loved. And I got my master's degree in 4 years and it was free. So if nothing else, you can get a great education and do something you love for as long as you can.
Something I would add to that is that if you think that it's just baseball, it's definitely not just baseball, right? So if you boys are in school right now and you think, man, I'm going to ball out, I'm going to hit homers, and then I'm going to go to league or I'm going to go to college and that's what I'm going to do, and I don't have to worry about school, that's probably half of it, right? Because once you get to college, it's like half of your job, it's student athlete. It's not athlete, right? So I think he pretty much hit on the day-to-day, the things that you have to do and the things that you go and do in school. But I think the main thing that I didn't realize when I was going into it, and that a lot of people don't realize, is that there's a lot of other things that go into it, right? The weights, the school, the early hitting, the late hitting. My wife now, she would call me and be like, hey, can we hang out? I'd be like, maybe at 10. Like, maybe at 10 we can hang out, like, because we got stuff to do, right? So it's not a full-time job. It's probably more than a full-time job, and it's something that you got to love to do. So,
yeah, I'll just keep hitting on their grades. Like I said, I wasn't blessed enough out of high school to go straight to DBU. I actually had to go into junior college, and that was kind of a big wake-up call, kind of like what Zach was talking about. We were weights, not 6 a.m. We had to go at 5 a.m., 5 days a week. It wasn't just 3 days a week. We were Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. You're late. Sorry. It's going to be a long day for you. But, yeah, every morning you're up at the bell tower, 5 a.m., running a timed half mile. Every Monday it was Mile Monday, and you had to do time mile, and it got down all the way under 6:30 or 6:15 or something like that. So that's how you start your day. Then you got to go to class. You have to have all your work done by 12, and then kind of go into practice, which he talked about the NCAA thing. Definitely not a rule, but definitely not a rule at the NJCAA, where they have no restrictions. So you're there fall ball doing like 18-inning inter squads, and you're there till almost 7 o'clock at night, maybe. And then you get to go eat, and then you have mandatory study hall that you got to get in the library. So it's a long day at junior college, and then it plays at the next level too. But the thing about the grades, like, I had good grades in high school and then had good grades at junior college, and that allowed me to get, at DBU, it allowed me to get academic money. So it saved my parents money and allowed me to be able to go to DBU. So academics are a huge deal.
Yeah, and I'll just add, hopefully what you heard from them, whether you're 12 years old or you're in high school, you can, if that schedule doesn't excite you, then you may consider something else, because that's the truth. Whether you're at junior college or at a mid-major Division I or at a big-time school, your day is full. Just like people who didn't play sports had to get a job, and you got to figure it out. And if you love baseball, it's some of the best times of your life. But it is really, if you want to be the best you can be, it's going to require a lot. And we'll have opportunity to talk more about this, but I just remember myself as a 12-year-old or a high schooler thinking that I was working hard, and you just have a lot more to tap into. So whatever you're doing right now, I would say for the majority of y'all, you should and can take it to another level, and you need to prepare yourself for college if that's what you want to do.
Okay, so we're going to, just since we're banging on academics, we're going to skip the third one and come back to it. So just to continue to hit on that, I kind of wanted these guys to maybe explain some kind of a story, because most people have one, especially at the collegiate level, of just someone that either lost their opportunity due to a lack of preparation and stuff with their grades, and or someone that snuck into a spot from their grades.
Hey, I'll just say that coaches definitely care. My first year, you remember this, my grades were not up to par for what they should have been. Not horrible, but I could have done much better. And I will never forget, everyone, Heath, our coach called me and he said, Nash, you better clean it up or you're not going to play here. I was like, okay, I better clean it up. So I think that, Heath, he didn't play around. So I think the main thing is that I don't necessarily have a story of, hey, this guy had a C or this guy had a D, so he didn't play. But I will say if there's two guys and they are going after the same position and they're trying to play, the guy who is taking care of stuff off the field, that's the guy that's going to get the spot because they care about that, right? And if you're a guy who's the most talented guy in the world but you don't pass, it's not the big leagues where, okay, this guy's kind of tough in the clubhouse, but he can really play. It's like if you don't make good grades, you don't play, right? So that really, really, really matters, and it matters to coaches too because that reflects them and it reflects the team. It's not just you, right? So one specific story, I don't know, but I will say it's a big deal.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that too, not certain one guy that sticks out in my head, but on a broader scope. I grew up playing with a lot of guys who, especially in high school, were way more talented than I was, that because of their grades couldn't get into Texas or couldn't get into OU or even UTA, right? Not the most prestigious school in the world, but still respectable. But a lot of those guys, right, they can't. I actually do have one guy in my head that sticks out. He got drafted in the 5th round out of high school, which is very impressive and hard to do. Didn't get the money he wanted or whatever, but ended up, he was going to go to Texas, couldn't get in. And he had already turned down the draft and ended up at Grayson Community College, which is a really good baseball school, but like they mentioned earlier, if that lifestyle is not something that you're about, and that's really like what you want to do, it's easy to get lost in, this sucks. Like we're up at 5 o'clock running miles every week. We're up, squatting every day at 5, right? And I see guys that had all the talent in the world that couldn't cut it in the classroom, and because of that, they went to somewhere that didn't fit who they wanted to be, and he did 3 years in the frat house at Texas Tech. I mean, he was an all-world catcher, perfect game All-American. I mean, whatever you want to throw out, he was it. And he went to Tech and partied for 3 years. So if that's not something that is important to you now, it definitely will be when you can't do what you want to do because of it. And I hope none of you actually have to ever experience that, because if I had my dream taken away from me because of something that I can control, it's way worse than if I break my leg tomorrow and can never play baseball again because I have no control in that. But if I didn't put the work in the classroom and my dream suffered because of that, that's something that I imagine is pretty hard to live with, and I don't want you guys or anyone else to have to experience that.
To touch on that, stop me if I'm wrong. When did you end up actually starting on varsity?
My senior year of high school.
Were you on JV as a junior?
I was. Yeah, I signed a scholarship to play Division I baseball before I ever played a varsity baseball game, which is very uncommon nowadays. I played for Blaine 10 years ago, close to it, 14, 13, but I was about as tall as that camera, and wasn't much taller than that until I was about 17. So, it's one of those things where you never know what's going to happen. I ended up growing and grew into my skill and, ended up being where I am. But, don't let a coach tell you what you can or can't do. Don't let not making varsity as a sophomore or a junior, discourage you away from the game, because like Blaine said, I played varsity baseball as a senior, and that is it. So for what it's worth, I didn't play on the really, prestigious travel teams growing up. I wasn't on perfect game All-American. I was a 5'6" white kid at 16 that couldn't hit homers, and, here I am. So it's possible to go from wherever you're at. If you don't think, I don't have a chance, I promise you have a chance. You just have to believe it and work like you're, going to play in the World Series tomorrow.
I got a couple. One kid that played for me in junior college sent me a text just a couple days ago. I was telling Nash, and he was from a really small town in East Texas, and he came to a tryout wanting to play shortstop, but we already had enough infielders. And I was like, why don't you just throw a bullpen? And he threw a ton of strikes and had really good grades. We didn't have any money, so he ended up walking on, ended up going to Southern Arkansas University, a Division II in Arkansas, and he's going to be a mechanical engineer. Just got engaged, like he's killing it. And so he took care of his business in the classroom. Obviously, he wanted to be an engineer, but also, I guess, you never know what level is best for you, nor do you know maybe what position or how it's all going to turn out. And so, like these guys are saying, just school is something that you can control. And I think, at least for me, when I think back on college, and it's difficult when we're at the field every day, and you got to have a social life too, or else you'll go crazy, right? You got to play the video games. You got to do, stay out of trouble is wise. But at the same time, it's easy to think about school as I just need to knock this out, mark it off so that I can play baseball, which is what I want to do. But the older I get, and I know a lot of people can vouch for this in this room, especially in baseball, the smartest dudes are the dudes that are getting the best jobs and they're making the most money, and that went to school to learn, which is like a crazy concept, right? You go to school to learn and be curious and to ask questions. And so, yeah, you want to get all A's, but more importantly, you want to be a dude that's hungry to get better in every area of your life. So take that as a challenge too.
So most
I can say something. I think they all, good grades. I think they kind of hit on it. I like what he said, but like the little things take care of the big things. So with grades, those little things, some as little as making an A in a class or passing a class, can result in a big thing for you on the field. Like he talked about a kid getting opportunity because he had good grades and took that and ran with it and super successful. So a little thing takes care of the big thing. And if you are a student that is struggling in a class, kind of know it from experience now, communicate with your teachers. It might be uncomfortable to ask questions. He hit on that. Like, ask questions, communicate with your teacher. Like, if you go into class, tell them good morning. Something like that can go a long way, especially if you are someone that struggles. Going in there and communicating with your teachers, they're probably going to be more willing to work with you. So, like, if you have a relationship with your teacher, like that grade you might be struggling to get, they might be more willing to help you get to that point. Kind of like a coach. A coach invests a lot into you because they care about you. But if you're the student that's sitting in the corner talking and all that, like, it's hard for a teacher to get invested into you if you're not invested into what they're doing. So get invested with your teachers, and that can help you go a long way as well.
Blaine, I forgot one more negative story. So it was my second year coaching at Dallas Baptist. The year before, we went to a super regional for the first time in the school's history. It was super, super cool. We had a good team in 2012, and we played in the Baylor regional. Baylor ended up going to play Arkansas. Arkansas ended up going to the World Series that year, but we had a really good team. That was your freshman year. So one of our left-handed pitchers, literally right before the regional, didn't get his grades, so he could not pitch. And in the regional, if you know anything, if you follow college baseball, mid-majors like a DBU or a UTA, we're hanging on by a thread with how many arms that we have compared to the Baylors or the Arkansas. And so losing a starting pitcher, we made it to the championship game of that regional, but ended up getting beaten. Who knows what would have happened had he taken care of his business. So it's easy to tell the hero stories, but there's a lot of bad ones out there too.
Which are important. So again, we kind of settled on a lot of these questions just from the questions that you guys submitted. As you can imagine, a lot of them were duplicate questions, so we're basically working it off of topics and as a discussion more so than just going through the list and answering what everybody had to say. So one thing, especially from the high school guys that continued to come up, was stuff about the recruiting process. So I kind of wanted these guys to touch on the experiences that they had, the things that did or did not work for them, and just kind of go with that, just to give you guys an idea. Because I know, especially as we start to get older, I'm sure y'all can remember too, that process for families starts to get a little bit overwhelming. You don't know where to go. You don't really know, do we pay $500 for an extra showcase? Do we not worry about it? So on and so on. So just, if y'all want to, who wants to start with that one?
I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go. I've talked to a lot of guys about video who I work with, and if you can get some video of things that you've done well during games and kind of send it to coaches to places where you think that you want to go, it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind thing, right? So if a coach doesn't know who you are, if he has no idea who you are, and then he goes and sees you play, it's like, well, who's that guy? I don't know him. But if they've seen video on you, and they can say, well, I know this guy's name, and then they look at the roster before the game and they say, oh, I've seen that. Let me go look at that video. And then they see you play, and you might hit a double or make a good play or do something well or play hard or run hard to first. Then it's like, oh, shoot, we might have something, right? And then once you start getting a little bit of a few connections or a few things here and there, and coaches start talking, then it's like, okay, everybody kind of knows. And then, hey, it might not work here, but it might work here, right? So it's kind of one of those things where you kind of have to put yourself out there, right? But you have to do the work also beforehand. With my recruiting experience, I will say that I don't know if there was ever really a time where I was the best player on my team. Why are you shaking your head? Yes. He's like, yeah, you're right. Dang, bro. No, but I think I was always a pretty good player, right? But, I mean, Blaine coached me. What would you say, Blaine? Pretty.
Nash just always knew what to do, always on time, always looked normal.
Tucked in your shirt, that kind of thing?
Tucked your shirt. Nash was a switch hitter. There wasn't a question really about any of these guys, just about what they were trying to do that day on the field. It wasn't more so that there was really standouts to where you went to the tournament and, hey, Christian Boulware is by far the best guy in the tournament. It wasn't, because a lot of people just think of all these national players, this guy's ranked, this guy's going to be the thing. Like Zach was saying, he was a junior on JV, got offered a scholarship prior to getting an at-bat on varsity. I do want people to know your story, because I know yours was more specific, right, on when you got recruited by UTA?
I'll just finish real quick if you don't mind. Yeah, I just think that with me, just to encourage every single one of you, I think I was never the best, but I would say I for sure put in the work to become better, right? And everyone says that, man, I'm out here grinding, whatever. You see all the Instagram stuff, like out here grinding, taking pictures at the gym or whatever. That ain't it. If you're really grinding, you don't have time to tell people about it, right? So I think I will say, if you want to play, go play. But also, it's not just going to show up, and it's not fairy tale land, right? You have to work, and you have to put in the work, and then and then there's no guarantees either. But you're giving yourself the best chance and the best opportunity to reach the best version of who you can be, right? So that's my encouragement there.
Yeah, and just real quick to kind of piggyback off what Nash said before, we get into my super interesting life story. But a lot of the times people like to talk about, oh, this guy got lucky or this guy got lucky, and luck is a part of it, right? You have to be seen by the right people at the right time. But I mean, there's an old saying that still, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I mean, to kind of get into it, the summer between my junior and senior year, I hadn't made varsity as a junior, which hurt. You know, all my friends that I grew up playing with my whole life, you know, are on varsity. They're having fun. They're playing. To kind of add injury to insult, I got to dress out for varsity, and then sit on the bench, which was, I guess, cool, but not really at all. But that summer, you know, I kind of realized I had a choice to make. I can either accept that, you know, my coach is right and I'm not good enough to do what I want to do, and, you know, either not work or do something else, or, you know, just have fun, or, you know, I can get serious about, you know, I think I can do this and I want to do this, so I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen. And as all of you know, the summers here are not cold. And I don't know how many of you have ever been to Marcus, but the cages are outside. And I hit outside at like 1 o'clock every day for an entire summer. Which at the time, right, it was fun. You know, the best part about baseball, you know, if it's something that you love and it's something that you enjoy doing, it's never really work, right? You might get tired and you might get sore, but you're playing a game, right? That's the coolest thing that I get to tell people, and I kind of downplay it now when they ask me what I do. I get paid to hit a ball with a stick. You know, it's a pretty cool thing that not a whole lot of people get to do as a job, or, you know, for an education, and even in high school, right? You're hitting a ball with a stick. It's fun. So to kind of get into what Blaine was talking about, that summer was the first time I had ever really thought about college baseball. I guess it's changed so much even since we were in high school as far as the recruiting. I mean, no one was committed at 14. No one was committed at 15 when I was in high school. And I guess that's a lot more of a normal thing now. But my junior year, I wasn't thinking about it, didn't go to showcases. You know, I was just trying to have fun and play hard and just enjoy myself and get better, honestly. I wasn't on the top travel team for the organization I was in. I was on the second team, which I guess just makes the story better. But, you know, we didn't go to all the really nice tournaments. We didn't go to all the really cool showcases. We didn't play the best teams. But, you know, I was the shortstop, and I took it as a challenge, right? I'm not good enough to be the shortstop on the top team, so every time I get on that field, I'm going to be the best player on the field because you don't think I am. And, you know, it was one of those things where slowly I just started getting texts and phone calls, and my coach, you know, would be like, hey, so-and-so's here to see you. So-and-so's here to see you. And like Nash said, you know, once you kind of get a little traction and get the ball rolling, college coaches talk, and I'm sure Austin can vouch for that. You know, college coaches all pretty much know each other. They either played together, or they played with someone who played with each other. It's a pretty tight-knit community. So if I go to a game and I see Christian play and we don't have a spot for a catcher, but he's pretty good, as long as I don't have to play Austin more than 5 times a year, I might be like, hey, this kid Christian can rake, man. Like, you might want to go check him out. And I mean, stuff like that happens. You know, the old saying, you know, you never know who's watching is true. The day that I guess solidified my offer to UTA, our head coach was watching a pitcher at TCU, and I was playing shortstop on the other team. I didn't know he was there. And he tells that story a lot, but that he watched me play and called me the next day and offered me a scholarship. So, I mean, you never know who's watching you play, and it sounds corny, but I truly believe it. If you put in the work and you're willing to suffer for what you want to do, because, I mean, hitting every day in the summer is hot. I was tired. I was sore. My hands were bleeding. But it's what I wanted to do. So, like Nash said, you know, people that actually work hard don't need to tell you that they're working hard. So be okay with that. Be okay with being uncomfortable. It's gonna be hard to get better because you're asking your body to do things that it's never done, and that's the only way to improve yourself. So, I mean, I know it's early, but I would challenge all of you, do something that you're not comfortable doing. You know, if you don't like squatting because you're not very good at it, go to the gym in front of everybody and squat. If you don't like benching because you're not good at it, or you don't like running, or you don't like, you know, whatever it is, if you get in the habit of challenging yourself and making yourself uncomfortable, it's going to set you up mentally to be way better off down the line. Yeah, so that's.
So your story, like recruiting's more like specific. Do you remember that game? Like, were you 4 for 4 with 4 bombs, 0 for 4 with?
I think I was 0 for 2 with a walk.
So, and I think people put more importance on what did I do that day in regards to my success. Was I 2 for 2? Blah blah blah. But
yeah, as the story, I don't remember, to be honest with you specifically, but as the story goes, because our coach likes to tell it a lot, the reason that I got offered is the way I warmed up. And a lot of the times, your coaches tell you, oh, stretch, get ready, look good, and it kind of, yeah, whatever. But honest to God, the way I played catch before the game is what made him notice me and watch me during the game. Because, you go 0 for 2 with a walk, that's not all that impressive, but it was a loud out. I hustled down the line, which is also very important, I promise. People care about that. But it was just the way you handle yourself and the way you go about your business, treat, and Nash can kind of back this up. And in the Jays organization, being act like a pro, be a pro is a big thing that they preach. And, go about your business like it's your job, like it's what you're there to do. Don't, I've coached baseball the last 4 or 5 years in the off season for school and professionally, but I cannot stand when kids show up to the field in shorts. I know it's old school or whatever. It looks horrible. I don't want to see you changing outside the dugout. I'm sorry. Okay, so and that's just me. Not everyone thinks the same way. But when you show up as soon as you get out of the car, there could be someone watching you that could offer you a scholarship. And you don't know who they are, where they are. He could be sitting in his car next to you. And if you get out looking like a slob, you only get one first impression. And if that's it, then, it's very easy for a coach to do that on the clipboard.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that real quick. I think what he just said kind of sparked something in me. I think a saying that I say a lot if I ever talk to people or kids is, if you do what everybody else does, you're going to get what everybody else gets, right? So if you are treating the warm-up, the game, the way you play, the way you run to first, the way you take ground balls in between innings, the way you do everything, if you're treating it like everybody else, then the guy who's there to watch whoever and might see you, he's going to be like, oh, that's just another guy. But if you can find ways to separate yourself, little ways, just little things that you can do, and he can attest to this because he's recruited, that's how you separate yourself and that's how you get noticed, right? And I also want to just say, hey, we understand that you are kids, so it's not like, hey, don't have fun, go out there, it's a job interview, like you serious all the time. That's not it either, right? Because if you're out there and you're not having fun, they're going to be like, this dude doesn't even like baseball. He's got no shot in college. He's got no shot in pro ball if he doesn't like it. You have to like it. If you bounce around and act like you want to be there and you enjoy it, that also helps, right? So separate yourself in some way. You have to play hard. I swear, they have a list, a roster, right? If you don't run it hard to first and I'm recruiting, I'm going to say, nah, he ain't got it. Nah, that guy don't got it. Or if you strike out and you pout and you walk back to the dugout, if you throw your stuff or if you get pissed or whatever, mad, sorry, the whole deal. That whole thing, right? You have to make sure that you are doing everything you can to get noticed for something good, right? So, just a quick snippet right there.
No, that's good. I think it's interesting, like the question was, about recruiting, and these guys talked about, are you the emails you send out, the showcases you go to, the scouting events, doesn't matter if you're not controlling what you can control. If you're not busting your butt and playing in a way that's going to be noteworthy for a coach, right? But for some of you other guys, something that did come to mind, hopefully as you're getting better in those areas of playing hard and getting after it, being a pro, so on and so forth, you guys are fortunate to have a coach like Blaine who knows you much better than we do, who knows your situation, who knows your families, and who can be honest with you, at least at this point where you're at, because, you grew up late, which some of you might, right? But where you're at right now, somebody that sees you play all the time, realistically, this is where, I think that you fit right now. And if it's a junior college, cool. If it's a Division II, cool. If it's a Division I, great. We don't all start in the same place. It's about, can you reach your ceiling, and if you compare yourself to other people, you're going to lose joy really quickly. So just focus on what you can do, and that's going to give yourself the best shot. So with that being said, if Blaine were to say, hey, man, I think that Division II is kind of where you land, then you take academics into account. You take, do you want to stay in Texas? Do you got a girl that you want to stay around? All of these things play into the schools that you want to play at and pursue. And the reason I say that is if a coach is not consistently reaching out to you, there's nothing wrong with you bombarding them with information. If you got a school that you really like, that you believe you can play at, I played with a guy, I think you did too, a guy named Michael Smith, that he had 3 Tommy Johns, made it up to AA, like the grinder type of dude. But the story goes that he sent literally like an email to the coaches at DBU every week. Like they had to know his name. And so I guess that's one advice from a recruiting standpoint. If you got good counselors that lead you in a certain direction, and then you figure out, man, this is a place I want to play. There's affordable. You're super creative with how you get these guys seen. When I was at Northeast, he would bring his teams down to our park and do a practice or do a camp where it's much more affordable than some of these other things, which I know some of those costly things are very significant too. Because there's a lot of coaches, and he knows much better than I, but there are creative ways where you can affordably put yourself in positions to be seen by people that I think are a good fit for you.
Yeah, I love what they're hitting on. I believe it was you that hit on, you can't match what other people are doing. So if someone's average, you can't work how they work. You want to be better than them. Your work has to show it. So, for me, my story is a little bit almost like Zach's. I didn't really have anything. All the way into my senior year, I didn't have any type of offers, any phone calls, nothing coming my way. I was pursuing schools, sending emails, doing whatever I could to try to get an opportunity, whether it was JUCO, anything, and no response ever. Or it'd be like, oh, come pay $2,000, come to our camp. I'm like, my parents can't afford that. So we would I didn't get anything. I actually went to, my high school coach landed me a JUCO, little camp deal. Go to that junior college coach calls my coach, tells me I can't play at that level. So I'm sitting there no offers, junior college coach. At that time, junior college wasn't as big as it is now. And it was shot down by them too. So I was like, do I not belong? The only difference is I got to play varsity. So, that's the only difference. No, other than that, no offers, nothing. And then Panola just randomly calls, gives me an offer, pounce on it. I'm like, yes, I'm in, all in. I want to play. And so they gave me an opportunity. And I believe that's, when my work started, separating. Because I was almost, mad at these other schools. So it was, a separation. I wanted to be different. So it was, the work ethic, the workout, gyms are a huge way to transform yourself. The bigger, stronger, faster you are, the better you play the game. The better athlete you are, the better you are. So I go JUCO, and same deal. I have a really good first year. Get to go to an all-star game, do all this stuff, and still the only schools calling me are D2 schools, a couple D3s. And I was like, what in the world is going on? I just had a good year, starting catcher all year, played every game, caught doubleheaders. Did whatever I had to do. I was like, I am working my butt off and nothing's falling through. And then finally, DBU and UTA actually called me the same day. And I take a visit, UTA Friday, DBU Saturday. UTA, get there. I'm like, oh, this would be a sick place to play. I was pumped about going to a D1 visit. And he was like, oh, you might be a good outfielder for us. You can swing it a little bit. So yeah, that's about all we got. We got no money for you, but you probably be on our like 4 or 5 hole and play left field for us. And I was just like, I'm a catcher, dude. I ain't played a single outfield spot this whole like my whole college career or high school. And so UTA declines me. I'm like, geez, like I don't belong. And go to DBU, offer me. That was my first Division I offer. I actually had Louisiana Lafayette call me the next day because we talk about how coaches talk, and they're saying, oh, we heard you got offered. We want to bring you in. Then they end up seeing me play, and I suck in a game. And they don't bring me out. They're like, hey, we're canceling your visit. We got no money for you. All of a sudden, the whole story changes. So it was like first offers I get, I was pouncing on them. So like DBU offered me, and it was like I'm all in. I didn't really care about Lafayette. So I believe it's different for everybody. It's the right fit will find you, and you'll find the right fit. That's kind of what I've learned is like you can pursue a school all you want, but if they don't pursue you the way you're pursuing them, it's probably not a good fit. So like I pursued a bunch of schools, attacked them, but then they're not sending me the same love. It's like even in the recruiting process, schools, like one thing that stuck out about DBU was when I didn't commit right away, they were calling me every single day, probably like 2 or 3 times a day, like, what are you doing? Are you coming? We want you. We want you. We want you. So they're pursuing me just as much. And when you find a school like that, that's I believe that's when you'll find your good fit. And it'll happen. Like everybody's story is different, and it's just because guys are like your age now. He talked about it. It doesn't happen. It didn't happen for us where guys are committing their freshman year. Just because you haven't committed, no, you're not behind, and the right fit will find you. You never know what your body might do. You never know what your arm might do. You never know the game you might have. Like, just trust the process, keep plugging, and work different. Separate yourself, whether it's in the game. Another way you can do that is just be a great teammate. If you're the guy that's all about yourself, like pimping home runs, throwing your bat up in the air, doing all that stuff, like that's not separating yourself. You're doing what everyone else is doing right now. Like, hit the home run, drop your head, go. Like, separate yourself, look professional. And I think being a great teammate's a way to do that. It gets the focus off yourself onto something, a bigger picture. If you're always just competing for yourself and doing your own thing, it's a hard game to play.
So one thing I think a lot of parents and players start to do, especially as they become sophomores, even juniors, is start to freak out. Like, hey, why isn't so-and-so school, or why doesn't my kid have this offer? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? I mean, I think most of these stories tell you that, you know, how many were any of y'all recruited as a sophomore? Okay. And that gets blown in a lot of the kids' faces, especially with national teams in our organization. So-and-so's 7 and committed to UT. And the likelihood that actually takes place is very low. I mean, there's story after story of guys that commit D1 and then they never go there. I mean, where guys end up saying, hey, that's not the right fit for me, where I go back to junior college, or they may go for a semester and it's not the right fit and end up back in a junior college. So I spent a lot of time talking the shame out of JUCO because, I mean, it's not a bad route. And a lot of people that talk about it, that's where they have some of the most fun they've ever had. So if you're a sophomore, junior even, it's not worth freaking out about. You're not doing the wrong thing. And the biggest thing, I think, the most realistic thing is if you're throwing 78, 79, and you look great as a pitcher, I mean, you're not recruitable yet. Right? I mean, if you're throwing 94 and not being recruited, you're doing something very stupid to not be recruited. But, I mean, some of the kids that haven't developed into their body or whatever, they're just flat out not at that point to where they're actually recruitable yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. So one thing, I know we've kind of beat this dead a little bit, but because one message that I preach until I'm blue in the face with the teams that I specifically spend a lot of time with is I spend less time worrying about coaching baseball than I do what they look like on the field, how they're preparing. You're not too cool to get your butt down the line. You should know where your glove is. A large majority of my time is spent in those areas, in I mean, whenever we're talking about recruiting, they're spending more time in those areas than they are of get on a tee, do a certain drill, exit velo. I mean, that topic hasn't even came up. You know what I mean? So I just want y'all to kind of go through some of the stuff you already have, but just the importance of your attitude, what your body language communicates to not only schools, but your current coach, your current teammates, and how unbelievably valuable just maintaining hustle is.
Yeah, so I think that there's a misconception with once you get to higher levels, they don't care about that. I think more than anything, they might care more, right? In the big leagues, if you're Manny Machado and you sign for $300 million and you hit a ground ball to the pitcher, they probably don't want you to run to first like as hard as you can because you have to do that for a lot of games in a year. Yeah, you don't want to pull a hammy, so I understand that. But almost everybody isn't in that situation. That's the 0.00001% of guys who they want to tell that to. I was in AAA this year. I've been doing that whole thing for a while, and if I were to say that they didn't care about that, I would be crazy because our manager, he's an old school guy, and that's typically how a lot of those guys are. The managers, they played back in the 80s or whatever, and they had to play hard, and if they didn't, they would get taken out of the game. So our manager would go. Yeah, well, so dude, I know Cologne. Y'all talk about him all the time, Joe. He has won a World Series. He's on my team this year. Great guy, good teammate. But game one, he's playing in AAA. Probably not happy about that because he's had a lot of success in the big leagues. He hits a lazy fly ball. He's like, I'm kind of cool at the first. He's out. It doesn't matter. And our manager goes up to him and says, "Hey, buddy, why don't you go and bring me 50 tomorrow?" So that's the deal. If you don't run hard to first, you bring the manager $50 the next day, which is kind of like, oh, whatever. But it's more the embarrassment that you didn't do what you needed to do in order to play hard for your team, right? There's the big team, there's the small me. That's how it goes. And even when you get to higher levels, that stuff matters. So if Blaine tells y'all, hey, you better be running hard to first, and you don't, you were warned, right? And if he pulls you out of the game and says, sorry, buddy, you're not doing what you need to do, that's not his fault. That's your fault, right? Just like me. If I ground out and I don't run hard to first, and he says, our manager says, Nash, why don't you go ahead and take a seat? It's my responsibility to say, hey, that's on me. That's not on you. I'm not going to get mad at him, right? So I think the main thing is that just understanding that that stuff still matters the higher you get. And people know. He kept a chart this year. And every time you would run above a 5, he would have a red mark next to your name. And you got guys coming into town who make decisions on who's going to the big leagues, who's going down to AA, who's staying where they're at, right? And that will change your life, right? Especially a lot of those people have families and stuff. So if you have a red mark next to your name and the big dog sees that, that doesn't really seem worth it to me. We're like, oh, well, he ain't playing hard, right? So control what you can, and running hard, playing hard is something that you can definitely control.
Yeah, I think just off that, I think it's really easy to look around you like I should be playing hard because someone might see me, or I should have good body language because someone might see me. But the more and more that I went from playing 60 games in college to 120 this year, which is it's double. It's a big jump. It's a long season. You got to understand what good body language does for your mentality. I'm sure everyone at this table can tell you more than one story about a slump where things just aren't going good and it sucks. I started the year not so great. I think I was 0 for a week, which is a lot of at-bats with a lot of strikeouts. And it was one of those things where if you let yourself spiral, you'll spiral, right? If you strike out and your head goes down and you drag yourself back to the dugout and you throw your stuff and you think about how bad you are, and I've literally thought it like there's no shot I'm getting a hit today. Like I'm gonna strike out 4 times, and I was right. because I told myself that, right? And so, yes, it's very important for recruiting and to look good on the field and to play the game hard, but the benefits that it has for you are way more important than that, right? I'm sure everyone in here has hit a ball hard and it's gotten caught, right? I see people do that all the time and get, mad and throw stuff and, why was he standing there? You won, right? As a hitter, you can control what you can control. If you hit the ball hard, you win. You can't control where they're standing. You can't control where the ball goes. So I would just, once again, just say, yes, it's very important to have good body language for a recruiting standpoint, for your coaches, for your teammates, because it lets them know that you care about what you're doing and you care about them. But you got to understand, too, that what you think, what you say, the way you act defines who you are and what you do. If you especially with umpires are bad, guys. It doesn't get better, I promise. It's very sad. Parents, too, it doesn't get better. If you think it's going to, I'm sorry, it's not. But if he calls strike one and you don't think it's a strike and you get mad and you just wasted the rest of your at bat. I have more than a few stories about guys taking strike one that they thought was a ball, and they struck out 5 pitches later and came back to the dugout complaining about the strike one. You saw 5 more pitches. Why are you worried about that one? Right? So just be aware of what you're thinking and what you're saying to yourself and the way you're acting, because it has a direct effect on your mentality and your performance. So.
Yeah, I like what he's talking about mentality-wise. Oh, my goodness. It rubs off on you and how you play, and you never know when that big at-bat can come. I had a day at junior college. We were actually at Northeast, and for some reason I could not hit at that field. We had a doubleheader day there, and the first doubleheader, 7 innings, next one goes into a 9-inning game. And my first 6 at-bats, I had 5 strikeouts and something else. But then in that 9-inning game, I actually came up in a big situation and actually came through for the team, just because it's that mentality thing you was talking about. You never know when it's going to fall your way. And if you're sitting there worried about the 5 strikeouts, I've had a terrible day, you don't get to be the hero in that situation. It just won't line up. So it's contagious for your play, but it's also contagious for your teammates. If they see you moping around and doing your thing, it rubs off a lot, and it gives you a bad look. It gives your team a bad look. If you're moping at the umpire, complaining at the umpire, it's that thing I kind of hit on a little bit ago. It's bigger than yourself. He hit on it too. It's more about yourself. When you're doing that, you're focusing on yourself, and it's not a good look. It's not going to help you at all. It's not going to get you out of what's going wrong. I think the biggest thing you can do when you're in that situation is get it off of yourself. What can I do to help the team win? So if it's a bunt, if it's a hard 90 where you beat a bobble throw, if it's something small like picking up your teammate, if you're having a bad day but your teammate might be going up for the game-winning hit, even if it's the same position as you, go pick him up, encourage him, get him going. So I think that's one big thing for me is that's how you can separate yourself. That's how you can help yourselves in that situation, mentality-wise. And I think you'll enjoy the game a lot more when you're having fun and going away from yourself and being able to focus on your teammates. The teammates are what you're going to remember. And if you're the teammate nobody likes, you're always throwing your stuff, you're always pissed off about something, mad about something, nobody's going to like you. They're not going to remember you as much. Where if you're the dude that's picking someone up, you're the dude that's encouraging people, you're the dude that's doing whatever it takes to win that game, that's what you want to be remembered as. At the end of the day, everyone has to hang it up at some point, and if they remember you as that jerk, it's not good. Some of the best times I have are, the most memorable stuff is just the teammates, being around guys. I'll never forget a guy like Jackson Glenn at DBU. That dude, most even kill dude I've ever played with. If he was having the worst game of his life or the best game, you never knew the difference. always the best teammate, always the first one there for you and your success. So that's what I would focus more on.
Yeah, so I'm going to tie all these questions in here. What are you looking for in a player? How can you tell a player has a real shot? Are there any patterns? And so a lot of what they're talking about is controlling what you can on the field. Again, right? Like your body language. And you've heard this a million times. Baseball is a game of failure, right? If you go 3 for 10 the rest of your life, you're going to play a long time. That's 7 times that you did not have success, right? And I know you've heard that a lot, but there's a lot of layers to how to deal with failure in baseball. But I think probably one of the lowest hanging fruits is in the popular phrase, so what, next pitch. Like literally when you made an error, there's nothing, you can't do anything about it. You can't, other than your response to it. And I know you've heard that, but how you can get yourself present in the next moment, and there's different tools to do that, and different people are different, but you have to find a way to do that. And our mental skills coaches with the Seattle Mariners talk about the breath more than anything. I mean, it's neurological. There's a lot of science behind why the breath is maybe the best thing that can get you back into this moment. So what am I looking for in a player? How he deals with failure. If you drag your bat back to the dugout, if you're pouting, if you're blaming everybody else, the umpire, the weather, my mom got me here late today, my shoes my glove, you wouldn't believe professional players at very high levels blame everything else besides themselves. And so I imagine that there's some blamers, some complainers, and some people who get defensive. The Ohio State, when they were really good, their leadership guru came in and said, no BCD, no more. No blaming, complaining, or getting defensive, no more. Right? So if you catch yourself or one of your teammates blaming somebody else rather than taking responsibility, you're in trouble, man. You're in trouble of being the guy who has bad body language because your mind ain't right, and I'm the scout in the stands watching you like, man, that guy's just not quite mature enough. Y'all are all going to fail, but how do you respond to it is very, very important. And then where my mind goes I would say the next part of this is, how do I know a player has a real shot? Are there any patterns? All of this control what you can, mental side of the game, go about your business in the right way is good. It gives you the best chance of me watching, because listen, you have to be a good player too. You don't have to throw 95, but if you're a pitcher and you don't throw strikes, then I can't recruit you. Or if you're a hitter and you swing at everything and you take pitches right down the middle, then it's hard to say, yeah, that guy can play. Now, if you're a big old donkey that hits a home run once a game, okay, well, then you can chase a little bit more. If you throw 94, but you don't throw many strikes, that's going to help me say, well, maybe we can develop that, right? So it's all on a scale. Some of you are more talented at if you play center field and you can really run, but you're little, okay, I can take a chance on that guy. If you play shortstop, you're really good on defense, but you can't hit. Okay, at least he's got a tool, right? You guys can control certain things, and then, listen, baseball is as simple as this. If you can throw the ball over the plate, you can swing at the right pitches, you could catch the ball, you have a shot. Now, not to beat a dead horse, man, but the main thing that I thought as I was coming here tonight, like with all of these questions, with confidence, with dealing with failure, with you getting recruited, with you becoming a better player, and I know this is basic and you've heard it before, but how do you prepare? How do you prepare? And we mentioned this earlier. You may think that you're working hard, but if you hit with a trainer once a week and you don't hit on your own for the rest of the week and you expect to ball out on the weekend, that's not logical. And you're talking to your friends about, man, I'm trying to go to SFA, or I'm trying to sign with UT, or I'm trying to do, you're not thinking correctly, or you're not thinking in a way that makes sense. And it's so easy to get caught up in the hype and in fairy tale land. I can't encourage you enough. And I'm not just talking about, like, we could take this to a lot of different levels. I wish we had all night. I would talk to you all night. But I'm not talking about you going to the cage for 2 hours a day and hit off a tee. That works for very few guys. The way that professional baseball players, if you turn your TV on right now, this is the way that the game is going. Before the game, they no longer throw easy BP fastballs to every hitter just to feel good before the game. You know why that doesn't make sense? Because every single person that throws that night throws almost 100 miles an hour, and the ball is doing crazy stuff. So if you think that you can hit off a tee for 2 hours a day and prepare for a guy throwing 95 with the crazy, do you know how many players have played in the big leagues in the history of baseball? 20,000. That's crazy what you guys are trying to do. And there's not many that have played college. I'm just saying you're up against a lot if you train really well every single day. You got no shot if you hit once a week. I mean, it's like that. It'd be like that if we were talking about you want to be an artist one day. Oh, yeah, well, what's your process? Oh, I paint a little bit once a week with a trainer. Oh, okay. Where you want to be an art teacher at? You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with being an art teacher, but you gotta, if you are talking about going and getting it, you got to go get it. And so, again, how are you training? Are you throwing bullpens where you throw 80% fastballs right down the middle every single time, or are you putting yourself into a mentality of, no, hey, catcher, put my buddy standing in there, call pitches, I need guys yelling at me. Max Scherzer, I got 30 stories I could tell, man. Max Scherzer, this dude is a wild animal in bullpens, and I have good evidence of that because I coach with people who coached with the Tigers when he was with them. He puts loud, raging music on. He gets his entire team, stands around screaming at him because that's the only thing that can almost simulate what he's going to experience in October pitching to get into the World Series. And you can't still mimic a game. You can't replicate a game, but you can try to get as close as you can. And it's not off a tee, and it's not throwing little baby bullpen, worried about what your friends think. You got to get after it. And I know you ain't going to be perfect, but you can try. Okay? Good. Nice.
So to retouch on kind of what Zach was talking about too, people had questions about, how do they remain mentally prepared? How do you keep confidence? And Zach was talking about it, about how you talk to yourself. I mean, if you tell yourself you suck, you suck, right?
Yeah, and just to kind of pick that back up off what Austin was saying, they go together, right? Confidence isn't something that, for some guys that are just amazing, yeah, confidence just is there. They know they're good. But for most of us, confidence is the byproduct of knowing that you're prepared. And like Austin was saying, hitting off a tee or having your dad front toss to you, there are benefits to that, but if that's all you're doing, you're I don't want to say wasting your time, but you're not maximizing what you could be getting out of your time. A big thing for me that honestly has grown a lot in the last probably 18 months is the way that I work, right? Because, I kind of fell into that boat in college where, even if you have early hitting or if you're taking BP, right, show up, give me some feel-good beeps, let's go play. Right, that was the extent of my training. I didn't like hitting off the machine because I wasn't good at it. I didn't like hitting breaking balls because I wasn't good at it, right? And that exposed me in the games when I couldn't hit a curveball. I couldn't hit a changeup. Did I work on hitting changeups? No. Why? Because I wasn't good at it, right? So, and to what he's saying too, our brains do this cool thing where we don't like something because we're not good at it, and because we're not good at it, we don't want to do it. But we just expect to get better at that thing, right? If you don't speak Spanish and you never go learn to speak Spanish, you're not just going to wake up one day and speak Spanish, right? I know that's like a kind of broad analogy, but if you're not good at hitting curveballs and you never work on hitting curveballs, you're never going to be good at hitting curveballs, okay? And you guys are very blessed to have a guy like Blaine that has played at the level you guys want to be at, has coached with and against guys that are going to play at the highest level, right? And he has all of our phone numbers, okay? If you go to Blaine and say, hey, I struggle with changeups, but I can only do front toss. I can only hit with my dad. I can only do front toss. I'm bad at hitting changeups. How can I work, right? He probably knows. I'm assuming he does. And if he doesn't, one of us probably does, right? There are ways to get as close to you can to mimicking games that are going to be way better for your time than just going and hitting off the tee or going and hitting off just down the middle heaters off a machine. Okay, I didn't like, and I'll be honest about it, I didn't like working at things that I wasn't good at. I'm really good at pulling the baseball. I'm sure most of you are, right? I wasn't really good at driving balls in the left center gap, so I never worked on it. I didn't want to fail at it. I told myself, I fail enough in games, I'm not going to go fail in practice too, right? But the only way to get better at something is to be bad at it. You have to be bad to get better. So, I mean, I know I'm kind of rambling, but it's just so important that you kind of be honest with yourself about what you're not good at and try to find ways to overcome the fear of not being good at it and put in the work to get better. And if you have questions, if that resonated with you, like I can't hit a curveball, but I don't have a $20,000 machine that can throw curveballs, and my dad can't throw a curveball, how do I work on it? Come ask me, I'll tell you. So I wasn't very good at it either, and I had to figure it out. And I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of different ways to go about it, but at the very least, you can ask, right? I might not know, but I might know someone who does. Okay, so the resource is there. That's not an excuse, right? But just really, I'm just challenging you guys to really get out of your comfort zone and work on things you're not good at, because that's the only way you're ever going to get better.
I think there's like science out there that says like if you actually say something out loud, it's like 70 times more likely to happen, right? So that's like the MOAD stuff, like Russell Wilson's mental skills guy. He says that, like, hey, because we have, I don't know how many, but a ton of thoughts even every minute, right? So if you get to the point to where you actually say something, that's when you believe it, right? That's why your words are so impactful and important. So I think what you say matters. You have to talk to yourself and tell yourself that you believe in yourself. And then you get to like the positive affirmation stuff, and people are like, man, I'm kind of out on that, like whatever. But I think there's something to it. And if guys who are in the big leagues and who are pitching or hitting and doing really well, just like I'm sure guys who are killing it in sales or in whatever they're doing, or women who are doing things that people haven't done before, wherever it is, right? I'm sure that there are people who are successful who are doing that every morning. They wake up and say, hey, this is who I am, and then they believe it, right? If you tell yourself, man, I'm kind of trash, well, what do you think is going to happen? That's probably what's going to happen. Or if you think lowly of yourself, you gotta tell yourself that you are who you want to be, right? So I don't have a ton on that other than that. And I know that there are guys who have actual written out affirmations that they read every morning. I've tried that. I can't say that I do it every morning. I do have a routine in the morning, which I think is important. But I think if you have some swords on that, but guys who read things and then it literally will change their life, right? So, I think just remaining confident and trying to tell yourself like, hey, this is who I am can really help you.
Yeah, I think another thing you can do for almost instead of talking to yourself is visualize. When we were at DBU, I'm sure y'all did it too, we had a visualize routine. So we started with the breath. He's talking about how you basically calm yourself, and then you go through like your highlight reels. So you get to go in your head, you get to picture yourself doing things right. So the great play, the diving play you had on defense, the strikeout you had in a big spot, the double you hit to win the game, different things like that. Like you can re-visualize those things, and that can give you confidence as well. So like personal highlight reels, and then we'd almost go into like game situation type stuff. So you're visualizing yourself in like the big moment, like bottom of the ninth inning, 2 outs, second and third, down by 1. I have to win this game, like 2-strike count. Whole stadium's yelling at me, and you're putting yourself in that moment and seeing yourself do something cool, like a line drive up the middle or something where you win the game. So like different things like that where you can visualize yourself. We would like prep almost before they even got to a weekend series. Like we would be seeing the field we were playing at. We would pull up their jerseys. We'd pull up their normal fan base. Like when we went to the TCU regional, we basically were thinking like, oh, 7,000 fans here. They're wearing white and purple. This guy's on the bump, and you're visualizing yourself do something great off of him. So I think visualizing yourself doing those breaths you talk about, because then like if you match that breath, we did it the front and the end every time. So you match that breath in a game. So like you're in that big moment, and all of a sudden you're like, do that same breath. You can almost like relive that moment you already lived in your head, and it brings you back to what you already visualized. So I think another way instead of talking is just visualize. And then you can do that same thing when you're on deck. Like if you know you're about to be in that big spot, it's like, hey, I'm doing this, and this is how I'm going to do it. And then you visualize yourself making contact here. You visualize the pitch you do it off of, and what's going to happen out in the field. You can kind of, it's that like speaking into existence that they're talking about. See yourself do the right things instead of, oh yeah, this guy's got a good curveball, I might swing and miss over the top of it and strike out and end the game. Like if you think like that and visualize yourself do that, it's a good shot you're going to do that. So visualizing yourself, going through your highlight reels, doing things like that can set a big tone for how you play.
Yeah, I know most of you should know Tony Gwynn. I know he was one of the pioneers of doing video work, and I found it interesting that he made a point to, I can't remember what I saw him on, but made a point to say that he never spent time on his outs in regard to his video. He spent time on his doubles, so why would you reinforce something bad? Why would you keep telling yourself you're rolling over and hitting ground balls? We should be working on what's working more so than trying to correct what isn't, right? So last two topics, a little lighter. So were there any coaching breakthroughs that you guys had, whether a coach jumping on you or some kind of affirmation or something that has stuck with you even today?
The thing that came to my mind was more as a coach. So we were talking to some parents before this started, and I just, it's easy if you don't watch a baseball game in full, you see the highlights, and I think it's easy to assume that those guys are superhuman. But having coached at the level I have and watched him play, that couldn't be further from the truth. They're really good, but guys make a lot of mistakes every single night. If you watch the World Series, there's mistakes that are made nightly. Like in the first inning, I think it was last night, what was it, runner at first, that little swinging bunt to the lefty for the Braves. He wasn't even looking at Freeman running to first and almost broke his ankle. It's like, how many times has he done PFP in his life? Yeah. And then he went to the next pitch. He got 3 outs, dominated, they won. But my point is that at some point and continuously throughout your career, you're going to fail. And for some of you, like myself, my first year as a head coach, okay, I was 5 years into my coaching career. I'm at a junior college. They give me the head job, super excited. And we could not have been worse. We were literally 10-41 at the end of the season, which is embarrassing to say. But I've learned that I learned not to take things personal at that point because it couldn't have gotten any worse. We had 2 12-game losing streaks. And that would be the equivalent of you're like, oh, for a week. Like, you feel like it can't get worse. My baseball life is over, and some of you guys have probably felt that or you're going to. And so that was a huge breakthrough for me because I got out of my own way. I was like, well, I've been trying to impress myself and impress others and get the next job, and I just completely fell on my face. So it's almost like, all right, I'm not good. I got to get better. I'm done trying to impress people, and my best came out as a result of that, and I hope that for you guys too. Some of you are going to have to learn that the hard way, and that's okay, but that was my breakthrough.
Yeah, I think if you care what other people think, it's going to be a long road, right? Really long road, and you should in certain circumstances, right? Like your family, people, like you shouldn't be a dummy, right? But that's not how you should live. I'll go off my breakthrough. I don't know if there's one because I still have nothing figured out, right? Like I'm sitting up here, but I'm still trying to figure it out, right? With everything. But I do think that one thing that comes to mind was when I was in college, right? And I realized, hey, maybe I'm not that good at defense. So maybe I need to really work on this. So I started taking a lot of ground balls because I knew that I had to. And I was good on defense for playing in high school, right? Like I would make the routine plays. But every level you go up, it speeds up a lot, right? So when you go to college, it starts speeding up. A-ball, everywhere, right? I'm sure the big leagues, it's even faster. So game starts speeding up. You get on defense, and then they hit a ball to you, and you're like, dude, that came fast, right? So I knew – I was like, man, I need to work on this. So took a lot of ground balls, did it the right way, I think. Short ground balls, long ground balls. I would throw across, do the whole thing. And I think, honestly, I've had for a week and change, right, where hitting has gone like this. But I think what's kept me in the game is that typically I've played pretty good defense. And that's kind of forgotten, but I think that it's actually really important. And I will say, if you can rake – but you can't play defense at all, you're probably not going to get recruited. They're just going to say, hey, man, this guy, he ain't got it, right? Just it's the same thing with the big leagues. If you can really hit, but they don't have a position for you, they're like, if you're in the National League, well, you don't have a job. So when I read this, I thought, man, for me, that's defense because that's kind of what's kept me around, and it's something that someone had to tell me that. They'd say, hey, man, you got to get better at that. So I think that was kind of my breakthrough.
Yeah, like he said too, that defense is what keeps you around when your bat's not working. But for me, my biggest, I guess, breakthrough wasn't, you hear a lot of cool stories about your coach says this and now you know how to hit. Mine was more of a self-reflection thing that involved coaching. I was my sophomore year at UTA playing shortstop, and my coach was hard on me all the time. Do this. I'd boot a 1 out of 50 balls, and it would be the end of the world, or at least that's what I thought. And my first reaction was defensive, right? Dude, shut up. I know what I'm doing. I've made 49 out of 50. I don't need to do that. Like, I'm good. And a lot of the times I think the way information is presented to you emotionally, it elicits an emotional response, right? Some coaches just aren't good at communicating what they think. And as you play for different people, and I'm sure everyone here has experiences with coaches who were your best friend, super cool guys that you'd love to hang out with, always made you feel good about yourself. And you had coaches who you felt didn't care whether you woke up in the morning as long as you hit good. And then there are coaches who are really hard on you, and you think they're, the meanest dudes around. But all three of those coaches know what they're for the most part, know what they're talking about and want you to get better. I mean, it doesn't make sense for a coach to want to tell you something that's going to make you worse, right? Like that's their job is you being good. So they're not going to tell you something that they think is going to make you worse, right? And it's easy to get, he doesn't like me. Your brain is really good at making excuses for why things aren't your fault. It took me a long time to realize that, okay, yes, the way he's saying what he's saying sucks, and I don't like it, but let me get past that and listen to what he's saying and what he's trying to get me to understand, because that's what really matters. And I went from being arguably our worst defender to I didn't make an error the last 43 games of my college career, which is kind of impressive as a shortstop on dirt. DBU's turf doesn't count. But from all that, right, just I'm sure all of you play for different coaches in high school, with travel ball, and as you get older and as you move around, it's going to be more diverse. And even with your parents, right? My dad was the same way where, you're pulling your front, Dad, shut up, right? I know, I've heard you talk for the last 20 years of my life. But usually he's right, and that makes me even more mad. But try to get to the root of what people are telling you, because the people around you want you to be better, okay? So my biggest coaching moment, to answer the question, my biggest breakthrough was taking a step back and trying to understand why they were saying what they were saying and applying that to make myself better regardless of if I liked the way they said it or not.
So yeah, last thing we kind of want to touch on, again, this is kind of a lighthearted thing. I mean, I'm straight up a baseball nerd. I look way more into, way deeper into what's actually going on than a lot of people do. I find a lot of value in stuff like failure. I find a lot of value in hustling when you don't have to. I know my guys, we preach all the time that a large majority of the time you're playing this game, even in JUCO, and a lot of those games don't matter. And so you're getting looked at when it doesn't matter. A lot of times you're in practices or inter squads. You know, those situations may not matter like on a tangible level, but they produce something, and again, this is just my opinion, more so than just having some success on the field that day. I think baseball really exposes your character, and probably a lot of sports do that, but again, I spend all my time on a baseball field. But just the exposure of your character, how it builds you, is something that, I mean, the game and the kids that I have, every single year it changes my life. So I'm kind of asking these guys that have been at the highest levels, gone through and setting stuff like this, like you guys are sitting in today, just now looking back at where they are, like what has the game, you know, tangibly done for you now that you're an adult?
I think Blaine said it perfectly. Like there's nowhere else maybe in life. I'm sure there's things I'm not thinking of, but where if you fail, like AK said, 70% of the time you're the best ever, right? So I think I'm still young, right? Everyone in here is still young, but I'm sure there's going to be times in our lives where it's going to come. It's like, man, stuff is not going well, right? Like, whatever's happening, it's just nothing is lining up. I know that's going to happen. I know that's happened. And for all of us at some point, that's probably going to come. So I think the main thing is baseball has taught me how to deal with that. Like you said, I like this, man. Being honest, it's been up, it's been down, it's been up, it's been down, it's been up. You get super confident, you're like, I'm the man. Like, I'm not getting out ever again. And then as soon as you think that, it's like, I'm awful. I'm never getting a hit again, right? So I think that the ups and downs keep you level. It keeps you humble. The game will make you practice humility more than anything else. And I think that that's something that you can take into your life that will always help you. Along with most of my best friends are from guys that I've played with. You know, AK and I have a ton of things in common because of baseball, along with other things. But with my family, like, we'll talk. I'll call them and say, hey, what do you got? You see that play? Did you do this? You do that? So it's not my life, not even close to being my life, but it is something that I spend a lot of time doing. So I'd say that the game has had a big impact on me. It's something that I love.
I'll make mine quick. This has been on my mind recently for a number of reasons, but we've all heard it's better to give than to receive. And transitioning into coaching from playing, I wish that I could go back and be more sold out to my team, because in 10, 11 years of coaching, the most fun that players have are normally at the end of a season. If you're in the playoffs, no one is worried about their stats personally. All they want to do is win, and that is normally when you play your best, when you have the most fun, and when you create memorable moments, because you're giving to your team instead of just trying to take. And that applies to a lot of areas of our life, and I think that that's probably the main thing that the game has taught me and reminded me of often, is that that's a big secret of life, man. If you guys can buy into, man, it's better to give than to receive, that it seems like life is more enjoyable that way.
Yeah, I was going to hit on the adversity thing. Like, adversity reveals a true man's character. When it goes wrong, what do you look like? And that's something that's impacted me a lot. Life ain't fair. I mean, baseball's not fair. It's really not fair. You fail a lot in it. But life's the same way. You're not always going to live up to what you think, like the expectation you want to meet, the money you want to make. Like, it's going to be a roller coaster of emotions. But baseball's the same way. So it's an awesome game where you get to experience that and find out like kind of how you deal with it and what works for you, how to overcome those things. So that's one big thing. And then I was going to talk about the teammate thing too. Like, for me, it's how to be a better person, how to relate to people better, the impact you can make on people. Big thing. Like, we watched a video the other day. Like, if you make an impact on 10 people's lives, those 10 people are going to make an impact on another 10 people each, and then it's just a trickle effect. So, like, you personally can make an impact on someone and spread that. So I think that's a big thing. Just being the teammate, learning how to deal with adversity, and then like met some of my best friends. Like, I'm about to have a wedding in like a little less than a year, and every single one of my groomsmen is a teammate I played with, and then my brother. So it's some of my best friends, teammates that I played with, guys that I communicate with still were my teammates. So buying into them, buying into the people you're around, that's a big thing for me.
I mean, I don't really have anything different than that. It's definitely made me a tougher person, right? And I feel like life has been easier for me than I guess people that don't play baseball because I played baseball, right? Like, challenges in life that seem to cripple people mentally, right? Like, if you fail a test, right? Some people don't know how to respond to that, and they fail the class. It's easy to look at people who have an ounce of negativity, and it ruins the rest of the day, their class, whatever. I think it's just made me a tougher person where I can get a bad grade on a test, or there's 1,000 different things you could make an analogy for, but for everything they said, it just teaches you how to overcome things because life isn't fair, right? And even in baseball, it's one of the only sports I can think of where you can be perfect, right? You can be on time to a fastball and square it up and hit it as hard as you've ever hit a ball, and you're going to get out, right? You can hit it right to someone. You can line out to center, right? So you can do everything right and still fail, and that's something that a lot of games don't have, right? If Tom Brady makes a perfect pass, it's a touchdown. Like, that is what it is, right? But in life, it's the same way. You can do everything right. You can study your butt off for a test and walk in and you look at it and you have no idea what's on it, right? But it's how you respond to that test that really defines who you are. So I think just piggybacking off of what all of them said, it definitely just makes you more resilient, and I think that takes you further in life than a lot of other things would.
Okay, so just to kind of touch on this too. I mean, these are all guys that I've known for a very long time. Zach and Christian were both 45s at one point. And some of these guys were too. Both of these guys even, hit with me somewhat whenever they were 13, 14 years old. So, I mean, the Knights, I've known Nash since he was in diapers. Austin and my brother used to play together. And I've known literally their family my entire life. And there's not a group of people that you would want influencing your kids than these four guys right here. I mean, I cannot mean that anymore. So, again, I'm glad everybody came today. If y'all are going to stick around for a few minutes, I know that these guys would love to shake your hand. And, if you had any short questions, I know they're going to be here for a minute. But feel free to. There's more food. If y'all want to stick around, we're going to be here at least till 9 o'clock. Is there anybody in here that has any specific questions that we didn't go over, kid-wise? He's a big kid. He's 14.
I am 12.
I was going to ask about multi-sport. Did any of you guys play anything other than baseball?
Yep. Yeah, I played football through high school, which I thought was super valuable, just like toughness and just trying to be more athletic, right? So I thought that was good. I played basketball 2 years in high school. I wasn't as good at that, so kind of banged that after a little while. But
I do think that, that's the question that's coming up, right? It's like, okay, do I specialize in one thing or do I go play another sport? Like, I think for me personally, I think the fact that I played football through high school has made me a better baseball player. And I don't know if everybody would say that, if they would have the same experience. But for me personally, I'm super glad that I did that, and I think it for sure benefited my baseball career.
Yeah, I just touch on that too, right? Like I talked about how baseball, you get something out of baseball you don't get out of anything else, and I think there's tidbits of that in every other sport, right? There's stuff in basketball that you only get from basketball, and you can go down the line. To touch on what Nash just said, right? Football is the closest thing to college sports you can get in high school. I mean, I don't know if it's changed, but my junior year was the last year I played football, and it was weights at 6:30, film at 7, class, practice, more film, conditioning. Like that was the day, and it's very similar on a shorter scale to what college baseball is like. But yeah, I mean, and unfortunately nowadays, I think there does come a time where if baseball is what you want to do and it requires the most attention, like you're going to have to make choices. I had to quit hockey to play baseball, which broke my heart. But, you know, I would say do as much as you can for as long as you can until it becomes a hindrance on one or the other. But at least in my experience, and everyone I played college baseball with played multiple sports. I don't think there was one guy that, maybe a couple pitchers who just were left-handed, so that's their own thing. But yeah, I mean, if you're a good athlete, like Austin talked about earlier, what can I get out of you, right? If you're a bad athlete but you can kind of hit, but if you're a good athlete who is raw and can, you know, take some coaching and get better, those are the guys that people want. I mean, everyone wants the shortstop that can play every position on the field, and I think the best way to get better at that is run track, play basketball, play football, try new things, right? And you're going to meet a lot of different people and have a lot of different experiences.
We good? Okay, thank you guys for coming. Get some more food.